communicate your ideas clearly, accurately, and vividly. The time of the speech is 5 to 7 minutes. This is part of an ongoing series of historic talks that Kari is working on for her historic hiking tours throughout Park City. This summer, starting in July, Kari will host one free hike per month for 3 months through White Pine Touring. Everybody, let's welcome Kari.
My speech is going to fit very nicely into the growth theme for today. I am going to be doing these historic hikes throughout the summer through White Pine Touring, but I'm going to be offering these free hikes via White Pine, and I'll announce those dates when I do those. There's 3 different hikes. It was late October, and an ominous storm was brewing over the mountains of Park City. Dark, low clouds were coming in from the southwest, and 2 soldiers were standing on the top of the mountain and trying to decide whether or not they should set up camp and stay, or to take some samples from the craggy rock outcropping that they had found and head back down the mountain before the snow or whatever was going to happen would trap them up on the mountain. They decided to pull some samples out of the rock, stuff them in their sacks, grab a stick from nearby, and they strapped a sweaty bandana to the top of the stick and jammed it into the ground and headed down. Heading down the mountain would be a tricky proposition. The hillsides of the mountains were covered with trees, pine and aspen. Their horses could barely make it through some of the trees. They had to squeeze them through the trees. They were so thick. Water and springs and streams flowed from every knoll and knob, from everywhere they could see. There was water. Water everywhere. Can you imagine that? I can't even imagine what this place would have looked like back then. It was amazing. I think of Little and Big Cottonwood Canyons, and that this area might have looked something like that before this time. It is said that when the first homes were built in Park City, every house had its own private spring. Yeah. That was Park City in 1868, and it was 6 months before the Transcontinental Railroad would be connected at Promontory Point north of Ogden. Colonel Patrick Connor was sent to Utah to keep an eye on the Mormon population, who were trying to create a solipsistic little bubble for themselves out here in the West. He had 300 volunteers from California and Nevada with him, and they set up shop at Fort Douglas, which is where the University of Utah is today. The Civil War had just ended, and these were men that were very adept at not only fighting, but also prospecting, because they had come from the California and Nevada Comstocks, and they knew how to prospect. Colonel Patrick Connor had a little bit of an issue with the Mormons, and he wanted to try to dilute the population of the Mormons in Salt Lake City by sending his soldiers out with supplies to go and find silver and other precious ores in the mountains surrounding Salt Lake City, with the hope that the world would come and dilute the population. The 2 soldiers made it back down the mountain. They had their rocks assayed or tested, and they found silver, gold, copper, lead, and zinc. And the writing was on the wall. The world came. And with the world came the destruction that the mining industry brings. Every tree on the hillsides from Upper Deer Valley and across from Heber, Upper Deer Valley to the canyons, Wanship, were completely taken out. And when they ran out of trees here, they went to the Uintas to get more trees, because all of this mining needed fuel. They needed fuel for the machinery, they needed timber to hold up the tunnels in the mines, and they needed wood to build our town. In the mines, the one problem that they had was all of that water that was coming out of the mountains. These mountains were like a sponge, Every bit of water that landed on the tops of these mountains was held inside, and it would just gush out during the year. And when they started digging these mines down into the mountain, the water it would flood the tunnels as soon as they would build them, so they had to get the water out. Huge drain tunnels were dug, 1,200 feet down and more, and then straight out towards the Jordanelle. That one was 3 miles long, and another one in the Spiral Mine went back 3 miles just to drain water out of the mountains. Another drain tunnel was built up in Daly Canyon, and another one at the bottom of Ontario Canyon, at the bottom of the mine road. Water came out at 10,000 gallons a minute out of these mines. That's 16 million gallons a day that came pouring out of the mountains. It was just getting flushed out. And when that happened, and all the trees were taken down, the landscape changed forever. The springs dried up, and the water was gone. The water still comes out of these mountains, but not in the same way. That's where we get our water, through Spiro and through the Ontario Mine Drainage Tunnel. It's filled with things that we don't particularly like arsenic and antimony and all that, and that's why we have to mix them together to drink our water today. But that's where we get our water. With the mining came the factories and the mill sites that processed the silver ore that came out of the mines. And with that process, where they used toxic chemicals and acids to separate the metals from the rock, the rock would drop into these vast ponds like sand, and the metals would rise to the surface with the chemicals, and then they would skim the metals off of the top. Huge buildings with smokestacks pumped out thick yellow smoke, and you couldn't even hang your clothes out to dry without getting holes in them from the acid rain. People's windows were covered with black soot. You could barely see outside. Abraham Lincoln proclaimed that Utah would become the treasure house of the nation because of the mining that was going on here. Miners that worked in these mines made $2.50 to $3 a day, and most of them only had a working lifespan of 15 to 20 years, because they would breathe in what was called silica, which is a razor-like fine glass material that would get into the lungs, and with all the moisture in the mines, the pieces would lodge into their lungs and fester, and they would become sick and die. They would literally drown in their own bodies. It was pretty sad. All of this was to dig deeper and deeper into the mines to get the silver and the precious ores that came out of these mountains. And Park City was born and became the treasure house of the nation.